Since Star Rail's launch and the release of certain destruction characters, I've long since thought Erudition characters have been unintentionally pushed aside. Sure, you had some who were decently good, but they were often outclassed or overshadowed by other DPS characters. This made Erudition somewhat of a niche pick, something you'd pull for only if you either really liked the character or needed to clear pure fiction. But in 3.0, we got the Herta, or Herta Prime, who has single-handedly put Erudition back on the map. Does this signal the return of Erudition to the meta, or is this just a one-off thing? That's what I want to discuss in this video, but before we do, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. First off, because this enters the realm of character mechanics and theory crafting, let me be clear, I'm not an expert in this area. I'm really only making this video as a follow-up to one of the very first videos I made for Star Rail, and I just really want to talk about Erudition and how it has evolved over the course of the game. So don't take anything I mention here as advice on how you should build your account. It's more of a historical take on how the meta has changed and evolved for Erudition. The early approach for character design in Honkai Star Rail, at least for DPS, revolved largely around three main paths: Hunt, Destruction, and Erudition. Occasionally, we would get some damage dealers from the Nihility path, but the vast majority of DPS would come from one of these three. The primary difference between them was really just how many they could hit, alongside certain mechanics. Hunt focused on single target damage and were meant to be boss killers. Erudition was AoE type characters who could hit every available enemy, while Destruction was a happy middle ground. While Hunt had characters that could do a ton of damage to a single target, Erudition was meant to be the opposite of this, but to balance them out, they often had lower multipliers in comparison. I kinda mentioned this in the previous video, where I felt the reason for this design approach was if you gave Erudition insane multipliers, you wouldn't really need to play anything else. A character that could do crazy amounts of damage and could hit everything on screen would likely be able to do every content imaginable, making other paths pretty much redundant. So Erudition stuck with multi-target abilities but with lower multipliers, the opposite of the Hunt that had high multipliers but focused on a single target. Every DPS path seemed to have a general role, but Erudition started to see a decline when Destruction characters started becoming too good at their jobs. You see, around the time Blade, Imbibitor Lunae, and Jingliu was released, we started to get Destruction characters that could do blast damage, meaning they could hit one main target and two additional targets next to them. Alongside this addition was also crazy multipliers, as Imbibitor Lunae, for example, had quite high numbers for his enhanced attack at the time. This made them the premium damage dealers, because despite boss enemies being a thing, they often came with a group of low-level buddies. Being able to deal damage to the boss while at the same time clearing the enemies around them was just more efficient. This was when Erudition started to kind of fell off. Why play the path of Erudition when Destruction was able to do their job and at the same time deal a truckload of damage? There were some mechanics built to supposedly balance things out, like Imbibitor Lunae requiring high amounts of SP and Jingliu dealing some self-damage to the team, but it wasn't hard to play around. Alongside the blast targeting Destruction receive, there were also additional buffs like off-turn attacks and self-buffing, such as Blade being able to do an additional attack once his counter maxed out, and Jingliu able to self-buff. Without these tools built into their kit, Erudition at the time looked rather lackluster and didn't really have a real purpose as Hunt and Destruction overtook them. Erudition still saw characters released that power crept the previous generation, but alongside them, other stronger characters from these other two paths were released as well. To bring Erudition back into relevance, a whole game mode was created around multi-target, pure fiction, but even then, you'd be hard-pressed to get an Erudition character just for this. So at the time I made the other video, I felt Erudition had largely been pushed aside for more mainstream favorites. Fast forward to today, in 3.0, it seems like Erudition has returned in a big way, or rather, a contender for the top spot has emerged: Herta Prime. Yes, I know, she's technically called the Herta, but I kinda like Herta Prime more, so I'm gonna go with that. Anyway, when Herta Prime released, she instantly shot up the tier list and is currently one of the strongest characters you can get. In fact, she's so strong that she's practically top table for almost all the main endgame content. She is precisely why I thought they would never do this, because just having Herta means you can pretty much cover most of the endgame. Of course, you need other teams and elements, but you get my point. As far as I know, only a few other characters can perform at that level across Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, and Apocalyptic Shadow, given each of these were made to focus on the strengths of a specific path. Characters like Destruction that can do damage and some AoE were good in MOC. Erudition reigned supreme in Pure Fiction, and single-target assassins made their home in Apocalyptic Shadow. Of course, I'm generalizing a lot here. You can still clear MOC with a party of all Erudition characters, but the point is that Herta can do it all, despite coming from a historically weaker path. What makes Herta so strong is the fact that she practically has everything a good character would want. Her skill and ultimate targets all enemies, she has a ton of self-buffs, she can buff the team, anything her teammates do buffs her, she has an inbuilt action forward, and on top of all of that, she has very high damage numbers and buff multipliers. She even gets energy when other teammates attack. All this while not having actual dedicated supports or teammates that are built for her, meaning she can only continue to get stronger. Basically, elements of what makes characters strong in Star Rail that we have seen in other characters in bits and pieces are all concentrated into this giant hat-wearing gremlin. This makes Herta Prime an absolute menace that can destroy a group of enemies and a single target threat at the same time. I mean, goddamn, even as an Erudition character, the way her stacks work focuses on the biggest and most dangerous enemy first. That said, she does have some drawbacks, such as needing an Erudition teammate to activate her team buff, and kinda needs a lot of enemies on field to ramp up faster, but it doesn't really hold her back that much. Now, despite her overwhelming presence, Herta is the only Erudition right now in this state. She's powerful, yes, but I really wonder whether we will see this type of Erudition character in the future because, again, the problem is still the same. If you had a character that can do all these things and hit all the targets for all the damage, then you really don't need other DPS characters. Yes, you can summon those you want for design, looks, or lore, but mechanics-wise, if Erudition continued in this direction, they would easily overshadow the other DPS paths. I can't even imagine what a character would need to have to power creep her. I mean, what would they even be able to do? Instantly kill enemies with a single touch? So, does this mark the return of Erudition? Honestly, it's a bit hard to say. Herta is the only one of her kind at the moment, and with how effective her kit is in overshadowing everyone, I'm a bit skeptical of Hoyoverse releasing more of her type into the wild. She might be a one-off situation given it is the first summon of 3.0 and she is lore-wise an emanator, so she has to make a big splash on her release. Because as I said, if Erudition starts going down this path and even power creeping Herta Prime, free-to-play players will rejoice as you only really need Erudition for DPS and can save all your resources for other characters or supports. Whether Herta is the start of an Erudition renaissance is probably too early to say, especially with the focus on remembrance characters for 3.0, but it does give us a glimpse at what Erudition might be capable of. Before I end this video, I'd like to just remind you, this isn't a you must summon advertisement for Herta, nor am I saying all Erudition characters are just bad. It's more of a follow-up to the comments I shared a year ago about the state of Erudition and the evolution of its characters. At the end of the day, every character can clear all the content, so play and pull whatever you want. It's a game, just have fun with it. I think that Herta is overall a great example of what happens when you give Erudition every benefit of every other path. They become incredibly strong and are automatically placed pretty much at the top of every tier list currently. It's honestly a great pickup for anyone returning or picking up the game for the first time, as you get a Swiss Army knife capable of doing pretty much everything. She might even be designed this way to ease returning or new players back into patch 3.0 rather than an indication of what Erudition might get moving forward. Amphoreus is likely the time for Remembrance to shine given the story, but I'm glad Erudition is also getting the spotlight here as far as the meta is concerned. With that, I'll end the video here. Do you think we'll see more Erudition characters on the same level of Herta, or is she a one-off? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video entertaining, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, good luck on your Herta pulls, and as usual, have a nice day.